Minahan.
Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests bring you leading-edge astrology conversations through a journey of soul growth patterns connecting astrology's energetic cycles. Get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Hi everybody, this is Sue Rose Minahan and I am the founder of Talk Cosmos, and today is March 27th. We're past the equinox and the light is returning in the northern hemisphere, and we have a new panel which we'll introduce in just a moment. And we are also in this phase of when the sun is visiting the archetype of Aries, igniting new starts. We've left that womb, we're taking a seed, we're bursting forth some consciousness, and it isn't always direct, it can be very internal. And so today's subject is Aries, new moon ignition key, because one of the ideas is that we take this new start and we explode from there. So it's going to involve a lot of new territory. Now, Sabian Symbols, you might wonder, what is that? Because there will be quite a bit of concentration about it in our talk today with the panelists that are these members. And they're intuitively reached from 1925 with Elsie Wheeler and Mark Edmund Jones. And they forge from the past before that. And it takes every single degree and they have an interpretation, which actually many people by astrologers have really concentrated on how to interpret. And that's what we're going to do too, because it's another layer. It's not always a linear concentration of the mind. We are in an expanded world where we connect through so many facets, and trying to understand our body and learn that felt sense of how that communicates. We're going to learn more. Okay, thank you. Now we're ready for our new panel, Archetypal Symbols.
Synthesizing the current archetypal new moon energies through weaving symbol systems such as Sabian Symbols, Numerology, Mayan Nawales energy days, or even Tarot, connecting to the astrological data and concepts for planets and cosmos. This is your Archetypal Symbols panel.
I'm Sue Rose Minahan, founder of Talk Cosmos, an evolutionary and eclectic astrologer and consultant, plus a certified color energy coach. I love investigating mythology's language, philosophizing esoteric fields of eternity, a perpetual student of life, seeing oneness of bodies, spirit of people, animals, and nature. I explore creative expression as an artist, a musician, and write abundantly, poetry to stories, and celebrate humanity's individuated, co-creative life force experience.
I'm Elizabeth Liz Machette, a professional astrologer, intuitive, numerologist, and tarot reader. I'm a certified sacred healing counselor, providing nurturing, in-depth consultations for individuals and couples. I'm an author, blogger, speaker, and international Reiki master and teacher. I create safe space in which to explore the deeper patterns of your life, to clarify your current circumstances and help you find your best path forward.
I'm Justin Crocodile-Z, an archetypal astrologer, teacher, and author. I combine both Western ancient astrology and modern psychological astrology with Eastern Vedic astrology, and I specialize in predictive, electional, and karmic astrology for individuals and couples. I'm a certified aromatherapist, an essential oil specialist, and an herbalist, and I offer remedial modalities of plants for psychological life issues to empower clients with compassionate healing. I also do in-depth astrological research into arcane astrological concepts, focusing on the mystical, occult side of astrology.
Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift." And that's why it's called the present. Yeah, ta-da! Here we are. Oh boy, yes, what a deal. trying to come up with a new adage that kind of it has an enveloping concept, because that's what we're doing anyway with the new moon today, which happens to be, let's give that information. It will be on March 31st on the East Coast and April 1st on the West Coast. Thank you. And on the East, it's at 11. I'm not sure what it is. Anyway, I'll have that on the slide. Sorry about that. But anyway, it's 11 degrees and 31 minutes. So it's in that second decan, which I think, Justin, you're really focusing, which I appreciate, and we all address. But it means that's a whole nother layer of astrology, right? How would you explain decans?
Well, the decans are just, the 3 decans, 10 degrees for each, for all 30 degrees of the sign. Basically, it's just the decans are the 30 degrees, and it's broken down into 3 parts, 10,
Yes,
20,
indeed.
and 30.
Exactly. Thank you. And I'm sorry if I addressed it that quick, because I could say too, like for instance, with Aries, and I'll say to our audience, just because you'll see on the maybe we should bring up the chart. There it is. See how pretty it is. We've got all these colors, and it's a new way that I'm doing the chart. But you'll see if you go to Aries, which is down at the bottom, and this is the East Coast. What did I do? April 1st. It's April 1st at 2:24 a.m. Oh, that's right. Okay. Very good. So the point is that in the first 10 degrees, there's an emphasis of Aries. And then because it's a fire, the next one goes to Leo. And then the third one goes to the third one from wherever sign you're starting, which would be Sag. So at any rate, we'll leave it at that. It's a whole beautiful way of showing a nuance. All righty. Well, hi, Justin. Hi, Liz. This is really great.
It's good to be here. And I wanted to make a comment about that April 1, 2022 adds up to an 11, and the sun and moon are at 11 degrees. And if you break down 11, it's a 2. So you have the potential of working at the 2 as a polarity or working in tandem. Or the higher octave of that 2 would be the 11. So there's more responsibility with that, maybe being a teacher and showing other people how to work with that. And Justin might have something to add to the 11.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think in Vedic astrology and numerology, the 11 represents illumination or new information coming in. And everybody's always asking, a lot of people see 1111, and I'm always saying that's really a great time of new information coming into the collective, and that's that number. And I like how you mentioned the teacher discipline aspect, because of course one of our Sabian symbols today speaks to that with the bear waving its paws, so
it keeps replicating. This is what I love about looking at these ways that mirror what we see, because it's like a house from another angle. And I've always learned, thinking of 2, that's a great introduction. Thank you, Liz and Justin. That 2 is partnership, right? It's me and the other person. And then 11, doesn't it bring in the spirit? Because, it is a master number. I don't know if it's a master number, but it is. Yeah, it's one of the master numbers. So it's that leadership of self, perhaps with spirit, one could think of in a way. But then I know enough to kind of get started with numerology, and I love this aspect. So that's excellent, Liz. Thanks for bringing it up. Because that is really a subject that I wanted to address, and it starts me off with my major question. The sun and the moon for Aries are at 11 degrees. Now, granted, it's 11 and a half degrees, but it's still 11. And the other pair that's standing out to me, singing very loudly, is Saturn and Juno. It's that little flower sitting there down in the second house, Juno, at 22 degrees. And they're almost conjunct. And meaning that there is couple of relationships there in many ways. And one is, if you just look at the separation, they're they could be at a, well, they're not quite at a, what did I write down? So what I'd be interested in knowing is 11, 2, and 22, 4. Like if you added 2 and 22, it goes to 4, which is foundational, and 22 is that master number. So they're both involved with a partnership on some. If and the signs are sextile. I mean, we know that just Aries and Aquarius, air and fire, you know, they connect with each other. But the problem is that the degrees, they're only 49 degrees apart, which means it almost could be a half square, which is 45 degrees. So there's some tension there. So with all of that, do you have some ideas of how you'd look at it, thinking from the numbers, I guess, with 22 going to 4 as a master number, with 11 going to 2?
Go ahead, Liz, and then I'll follow.
Well, I like the 4 is, it's like, you know, it's obviously, from, in my opinion, it's putting in the hard work. And I'm going to reflect back to Saturn is our responsibilities, our duties, and Juno's how we partner. So it's kind of saying there could be some work to do in our partnerships. Maybe to bring it to a new level, but also using the symbols of the planets, it could be that partnerships formed at this time could last for quite some time, because it's like that, you know, form now, it could really last, but there's always work to do, I believe. Now the 22, it's another master number, but this one comes with, I believe, more responsibility in that. So go ahead and add, Justin, please.
Yeah, I agree. You know, that 22 is the next step in relationship, and generally when people have 22s in numerology, it's any master number. It's a mirroring effect. So if a person has 22 in their numerology, it's a very agreeable number. You know, they'll put the decision on the other person. And, you know, Juno, of course, as we know, represents that archetype of Jupiter's wife. So it represents commitment and marriage, again, to a relationship. And Saturn, that disciplinary, you know, that discipline. And then I would point to the 23 degrees, the archetype, or symbol for that is a big bear sitting down, waving its paws. And Dane Rudyard spoke to this as representing discipleship or discipline. So I think there is sort of this commitment to relationships in the collective right now, which we're kind of working on. And that's just one pillar versus that Aries that's trying to make things a certain way and a certain type of ordered structure. I think, yeah, we're going to definitely be, it's actually very positive to have Saturn conjunct Juno. And Aquarius rules relationships in the collective. So I think this is a really great time to reach out to people, to work on relationships. I think it's going to be a little bit easier, actually.
Oh, I so appreciate both of your viewpoints on this. It gives such a landing dimension. It's grounded, first of all. I mean, it is Saturn and our partnerships. And I'm thinking too, here we're starting a new partnership. And I on Talk Cosmos have a lot of, it's very appropriate. But, so on a personal scale, which we all first look at in life, it seems like, making our collective. But isn't this good too going forward? Because this happens to be in the second house, you know, for the nation. And we are at this time really looking at so many well, it's sandwiched right between Mars and Venus, isn't it? So it's really reestablishing our direction for commitments and values. Yeah, you've illuminated. Thank you. It's very good. Liz?
Well, and this chart shows so much about beginnings. We have the Aries energy. It's fiery. It's cardinal. It wants to initiate. It's like the sun is coming back. We have longer days. It's like all this energy wants to get out there and move, and passion. And blaze some new trails. It's very exciting. So, there's so many things that just repeat, that says this newness coming in.
Justin, maybe, yeah,
I was
go
going to
ahead.
say I would agree totally with Liz there. I think it's a newness, it really does. If you've got the sun and moon and Mercury all in Aries in the third house of thinking and communications, this is really about, okay, new revision of attitude and the beginning of a new experience, which is really what that Sabian symbol, for the Mercury kind of represents with the teacher gives new symbolic forms, traditional images, and then of course sort of this concentrated attention towards moving forward in a new experience and new beginnings. So I totally agree with what Liz is saying there.
You know what? I'm so glad you bring that up with Aries and the third house, because in evolutionary astrology, which of course they all have their facets, it does give some common attributes. Understanding, because traditional is very, I don't want to offend anybody. Of course, I recognize that the house has its areas and the sign has its capacities and the planet. They're all different, but yet just thinking in that third house of needing to communicate, because essentially we know that Aries and Gemini can't shut up. When it's in a sign, it's got to just express, right? My father was an Aries with a Gemini moon, and I loved it. It was like a motor going with all these great ideas. But here, we've got that energy, don't we? I would say, to some degree. And I know you do Vedic too, Justin. So anyway, I throw that out, but I am interested in hearing about the Sabian for 11. And Justin, maybe you want to start with that?
Yeah, well, you mean for the moon and the
Yes,
sun.
sun and moon.
11
Thank
is
you.
the ruler of a nation, which one of the interesting things that this degree of Aries, and Aries being that fire, that energy, that fire element in our bodies and how our forward effort is done, of course ruled by Mars. I found that this particular archetypal symbol kind of speaks to more sometimes what we see in the Sabian symbol, sort of a bringing in things together and centralizing and being aware of one's limitations and kind of bringing it all back in and not being scattered. Sort of centralization of power is what Dame Rudyard talked about this, because as we know, if you've got a moon in Aries, boy, there's an impulsiveness there. There's like, I've got to do it now, and so I think this is sort of saying, okay, yep, people are going to have that concentrated attention, really centralizing of power. I mean, this would be a great time to start a new business, start a new project. I mean, really, with these three planets and Aries in the third house.
Yeah, that discipline and integrity. And then the next symbol is 12 Aries, is a triangle shaped flight of wild geese. And to me, that means like working together and brotherhood. It's like, let's do this together.
That one's really
Yep,
one to
yep.
expand on. Yeah, because go ahead, Justin. Yeah, how would...
No, I'm just agreeing with Liz.
Well, I would like to rest on this one because it is really, in a sense, like the study of Sabians, where it's at, where it's going. There's a lot of conceptuals, and we've come to the agreement that we're going to look at the first degree and then the next, how, as a progressive.
Can I say something about this? And I'd be
please.
curious what Liz thinks about this, because in doing individual charts, when this particular Sabian symbol comes up about that triangle shaped flight of wild geese, which Dame Rudyard talks about, and an idealistic reliance upon a mental image of cosmic order, meaning, and sometimes if it shows up in a person's chart, it can be a person that thinks, oh, this is the only way it's got to be. Right? They're stuck on that one cosmic order mental image, and idealistic, right?
Wow.
That it's only got to be this way or my way or the highway, And I think this kind of this kind of raises something here about that people are at this period of time going to be really driven by it's got to be this way, but there's something that pulls back in the chart. And with that Hygiene Scorpio and some other degrees there that say be careful of that. Be careful of that. It's only got to be this way, that cosmic order, that there's got to be some variance there. I'm just curious
That's
what Liz would
well,
think about that.
yeah. I had some thoughts too. Go ahead, Liz, if you have one. Yeah.
Well, thinking of birds fly in a triangular shape, which is true, but they don't fly 24 hours a day. They take turns of who's the lead. They stop
Yeah.
and rest. They stop and eat. They sleep. So to me, it's like balance of body, mind, and spirit. All the pieces. It's like you have, yes, that's a good thing to be informed and work together, but you need to take care of every part.
This feeds into my own interpretation, because I did study that one a little bit, and I find it really fascinating because, again, as you've both will present through our pre-thoughts or talk here, that how it's reflecting so often. Okay, to the point. And that is that the first one at 11 was really this, what is it? It's more not the conditioned, but it's the, ruler of a nation, that it's centralized power, as you had mentioned, but it's more away from the instinctive into more of a social agreement, like, which isn't really Aries. And the geese was this as Rujar, which I really, as far as the audience, if you're looking, he's online, he's wonderful interpretation, Dane Rujar. And it's a transcendent of the soul, transcendence. And this cosmic order, though, is like a transcendence. It shows that it's interesting that, and I like your experience, Justin, to see that it could be fixed, because it's very true. As
Right.
I imagine, we all have that idealism.
Well, the reason, that I think that's a key word, idealistic.
Yeah.
We know that
Mhm.
things are not ideal in life. And then what informs that idealistic view, oh, it's my, it's got to be only this way things are going, is the 13 degrees, the next degree, which is an unexploded bomb reveals an unsuccessful social protest, which speaks to adolescent frustration. If it isn't going my way, I'm going to get frustrated. I'm going to get upset. So it kind of speaks to pay attention that not everything's idealistic in this cosmic order. That's the way I kind of saw that, as we move forward in this new working with others and everything, we got to be careful of only going, it's only my way.
It's very true. And besides, we are, well, it's Aries, but again, going back to that 22 with Saturn, that's networking. I mean, it is really trying to get the collective and that. And the ascendant, and not to go away from this energy, but I know that for the nation, there was some talk about the ascendant of its importance. If Liz, I guess.
Well, for the ascendant 7 Capricorn, a veiled prophet speaks, seized by the power of God. So it's bringing information forward to be shared.
Ooh, that kind of combines both of it. Yeah.
Do you have anything to add, Justin, to that one?
Well, I think it's when I think of that, every time I see that Sabian symbol, veiled prophet, of course I go back to Moses, or Gabriel, sort of this announcement of something, and I think speaks to what we're into today, a new beginning here with this Aries new moon, spring equinox just happened, announcement of it's here. It's a new cycle. That's why I think of that veiled prophet, sort of a mediatorship of, for others, that Capricorn,
All the birds, I'm just remembering, this really feeds into all that idea about the birds and the thoughts and the leaving from the concrete above. So many of these planets have that message.
And birds typically bring messages. So, that mercurial information, it's like really interesting how it all blends together.
Yeah, I go ahead. No, go ahead, Liz. I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say about the birds. As I was studying this chart and thinking, it kind of made me sit back and think, okay, how throughout all the Sabian symbols, Elsie Wheeler used birds as an archetypal symbol towards communications, or like you were saying, messenger, and um, also how they're affecting our emotions. Because I think, isn't the 8 degrees on this? What's the 8 degrees on the one there? Isn't it birds singing joyously or something?
Oh,
In a
it's 8
sunlit
degrees of this. Go ahead.
in a sunlit home, domestic birds sing joyously.
So it's bringing in and affecting our emotions, at some level here.
Oh, I love that connection. Thank you, Justin.
And listen to the music, whether it's the music of the birds or the music on the radio or the music of nature. It's like, listen to the music.
They're all like stepping stones, aren't they, to lead us, as I was saying, to that conjunction happening on April 12th. It's a 166-year cycle. It doesn't happen overnight. Jupiter and Neptune conjoining in Pisces. I just think of all that inspirational, and what you're bringing up is the mind and the spirit. Of course, the body has to work with it too. It's a whole, effect.
Well, it emphasizes, that the days are getting longer and to get outside in some sunlight, perhaps. And so I like the emphasis of how that just reinforces it over and over.
So that just leads me to the midheaven. Because, I always say, and I don't know if you two do this as well, but I always like, when I'm doing a chart, I go look at that ascendant, because that's most important. Then I go look up that midheaven. Where are we ultimately driving towards? What ultimately we're learning here. And I love that, because this leads us to the midheaven, which talks about the Sabian symbol is a crowded sightseeing bus on a city street, which is talking about a widening of experience, getting out there, getting outdoors, getting that experience. And then, of course, the next degree is a delicate bottle of perfume, lives broken, sort of about surrendering and letting go of those memories of the past as we move into this new experience,
Wow.
And it's time for a break.
Oh my gosh. I had faith. I looked at the clock and thought, I know we'll segue. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Liz. This is with Justin Crockett, Elsie, and Elizabeth Liz Mouchette, and it's Archetypal Symbols. I'm Sue Rose Minahan, Talk Cosmos. We'll be right back. Thanks. While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We're currently in the period of Aries. By leaving a cycle based upon completion, the energy of Aries sparks initiation, creating action to separate into a new cycle of life. It's a fire sign, which means it will involve great emotion. And because separation may create resistance, it also takes great courage to break away to new ways of becoming.
Hi, it's Dr. Laura Tad, here to let you know I have an upcoming online course in personal mythology. In this course, you will explore the stories that you carry and how they impact your life. Some of these stories you have unconsciously inherited from your ancestors. Others are more culturally tied. As you unpack these stories, you will come to see which ones support you and your highest potential, and which ones you've outgrown and could use a rewrite. Class starts in April. Space is limited. For more information and to register, please go to my website, mythicsky.com. I hope to see you there.
Talk Cosmos brings.
Welcome. This is Bear River, Usui Reiki Master and the astrologer of Psyche and Soul Astrology. You're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk 1150 AM, where we unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness.
On the path to good health and well-being? Alternative Talk 1150 is the station for you.
Hello again. We're back. And we're talking about the new moon and all its connections, forwards, backwards. At the moment, it's Aries. We're kind of going forwards. And although we are dropping a lot of it. And so if we look at that chart, I was just noticing Saturn is squaring, as we say in astrology, the nodes. Now, the nodes are from the South Node, which is that little horseshoe up at the top in Scorpio, at 23 degrees. And they go backwards, by the way, for folks, which astrologers are aware of that cycle. It starts at 29 or 30 and goes to 1 to 0. So at 23 degrees, and that's where we're coming from collectively in Scorpio, of our shared resources, our financial, our committed relationships, our passion, and the occult, So then the esoteric, we could say, perhaps, that of why, our psychological soul growth of why we're here. What feeds us, what gives us power, or doesn't give us power, what do we have to shed? And that's a lot of it, trying to move to that next one of our self-reliance in Taurus, of self survival, and our resources, our talents. It's financial too, it's our values, relationships, because well, it's not so much relationships, except Venus rules it. Okay, not to diverge, but my point was I wanted to bring that access to people's attention, that's what we're talking about. And in this chart happens to be in our collective, and we're kind of leaving in trying to find that manifestation of ourself. It's in the 5th house. It's like, how can I participate? And it's not leaving, but integrating, right? So that we can be that individual that showers what we have into our collective. So this square energy I'm looking at is, of course, the 22 degrees, which we talked about in the very beginning in the master number of Saturn and Juno. And Justin, you were mentioning, gratefully, I'm glad that this is a great partnership, right? Because that's what Juno does. What am I going to align with? And as Liz, you said, it's going to be for time. It's going to be for some destiny here. I mean, we may not count on a lot, but we could try to start counting on how are we connecting with people. So at any rate, I know that there's also other Sabians involved, but just looking at that as really a potential toggle, as I refer this struggle often, how we toggle between two things on line or whatever, it's this and that going forward.
Well, and I'd like to make a comment on that Saturn square the nodes. The last node that went over that degree would have been the south node. So perhaps there's some old relationship issues that you need to release or work on and let go or update them, is what I would say.
The last degree that it went over, what do you mean? I'm sorry.
The south node was the node that went over the degree of where Saturn is. So it's a south node issue.
Oh, okay. So it is really important to start addressing, of course, what do we need to let go of to get space so that we can become this new resourceful energy.
Right.
Justin,
So there's,
I guess too. Yeah.
there's some released work to do there a little bit.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree with that, because we've got I agree with that because, Saturn being that planet of karma and discipline, and it's saying in order for us to, I feel like it's saying that for us to accomplish what the nodes are wanting to us to accomplish, it's reminding us there's something we have to do, like Liz is saying. And it's interesting when you look at those Sabian symbols, the south node on the Scorpio, just to summarize those two Sabian symbols, 100 shooting ducks and a rabbit metamorphosing into a nature spirit, there's something about raising of our animal drives, of improving ourselves, of letting go of things, like we were talking about the perfume bottle, and Liz is mentioning about letting go of something. And then, of course, working towards that north node, which is a white dove. And it's interesting, there's two white doves today in two separate Sabian symbols, the one for the Mars in Aquarius and the one for that north node in Taurus. And both of them speak to some element of certification of worth and certifying and improving something here. And so I definitely agree. I think that Saturn is key, as Liz was mentioning. I think that Saturn's key to saying what we have to be disciplined about in order to accomplish what we want to out of this chart.
So glad you brought up that about the dove, Justin, and Liz. I mean, I'm just as feedback here, because it really struck me strongly. I did study about the node Sabian symbols, and that dove, according to Dane Rudjar, is a symbol of guidance. And of course, as you mentioned, biblically, Noah's Ark, that's like a big register for a lot of people. But that guidance that we receive through the reference to the dove, and the bird reference again and again, aviary is it brought up in different ways, but so wonderful, because I am thinking we're like progressing towards that conjunction with Jupiter and Neptune in 2 weeks. Onward.
Well, and most of the planets from the ascendant out to the north node consists of about 135 degrees. So the first quadrant of a chart is about self and learning. And then if we add the fourth house in, it's, safety and security and building a foundation on it. So the last several charts over the last several months have had a very focused energy, and this one has a even more focused energy than we've seen. So I think that that's important, to focus on what we need to do to move forward. Because we're coming off the pandemic. It's been an interesting couple of years. So, the whole world has changes to make. And then it was interesting, the Chiron, kind of is 1 degree next on the sun and moon. So it, to me, really played in tightly with this new moon.
There is a lot of healing, essentially, very much that wounded healer archetype that we know, the great master, unable to heal his own wound of his heel that got, or leg with the wounded.
I agree with that Chiron, and because we know when a person has Chiron in Aries, it's the wound of self, and so that matches exactly with what Liz is saying with all these planets in that first quadrant. It's all about working on ourself at this particular point. So,
Justin, would you, Pholus, which is a centaur, also along with Chiron, and a centaur for people is a half man, half horse. I think. Are there women centaurs? I don't know. But at any rate, it seems like they're mostly men. But it is that half nature, half humanity, that concept. And Pholus is that little pineapple sitting up there on the top of the ascendant, conjunct our ascendant exactly within minutes. And you're quite a student of Pholus, and I quickly know that Pholus was a centaur that had the jug of wine, that was the keeper of it, that decided to finally open it. And of course, all the centaurs went a little haywire, and then ending up her Chiron had, because they were at a party, got wounded. So how are you? Is there a significance there with Pholus, right?
Well, I think it's interesting because it kind of represents, that's it represents sudden events, or sudden something sudden, like we pop the cork off the wine bottle, right? And so I think it's interesting that it happens here on the ascendant, that veiled prophet, and I think it's kind of bringing in this sudden change of events, sudden change of structure as we move into a new cycle. I think that's really, I don't want to get too, and in a person's chart, individual chart, this would represent something very like a sudden change at birth, because it's on the ascendant. But here we're looking at a new chart, new birth. So this is a sudden change. I think we're going, from what we've gone through the past 3 years, this is a break with where we've been, and that we're doing something suddenly new and different here.
Yeah. And with potential. I understand we are not here to suggest or implement or something, but still it has some significance that way, because I mean, just looking at this huge new cycle, and I keep bringing it up, but it is very conscious to me about the the Jupiter and the Neptune, they're down there in Pisces. Of course, Neptune's the 13, 14-year cycle, so it's been a long time. But Jupiter coming up with it is 166. Last time it was 1856. So much has happened. Industrial life. I mean, we're on a whole precipice, if I'm saying that word right, like on the ledge of new consciousness. And this is one aspect. So I think, in a sense, looking at Pholus, that's Pholus, folks, that little pineapple up there as a centaur, is just indicating, get ready and start listening to these messages that want us to bridge into spirit, whether, however we look at it. Anyway, thank you for that.
So can we go to the Jupiter Sabian symbol and Neptune Sabian symbols?
Oh, please. Yes, I'm ready. Go.
So 21 Pisces is under the watchful and kind eye of a servant. A girl touches a little lamb. So to me, that was like innocence and exploring and learning new things through touch and being around an animal. It's like, okay, what's the boundaries? Do you have anything to add to that, Justin?
No, I think it's it matches with everything we're talking about here. I think with that Neptune and Pisces, we know that Pisces rules the 12th house of the subconscious and dreams, mysticism. I think it's actually a positive thing in the chart that it's, this is a very creative time. That Aries energy and Pisces energy, it's very, 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 very creative time.
And then the next one is 22 Pisces, a prophet bringing down the new law from the mountain. So it's, to me, it's like new information is coming through. It's like we're going to create a lot of new things, which is probably a good thing.
That goes right along with, what was it? The guidance was it the nodes? Or it was the sun itself at 12 degrees. In other words, it's replicating these messages of the cosmic order, but then also with the, help me here, with the white dove over troubled waters, this guidance, right? It's just amplifying more.
And then for Neptune, we have 23 Pisces. A materializing medium gives a seance. So to me, that's always messages from the other side coming through.
Yeah, and Dane Rudyard, I thought was interesting, and taking it from a person that's actually conducted seances myself personally. This one particularly, Dane Rudyard, there's something that happens in seances where one uses, or spirits use, your energy. That's how we get ectoplasm. Not to get off on something else here, but it kind of speaks to what Dane Rudyard was talking about with this as well, sort of the substantiation, or using one's own energy to accomplish something, So, and I'm not sure what the 24 degrees was, though, after that.
A small island surrounded by the vast expanse of the sea. People are living in close interaction. So it's another symbol of like working together, for survival. If you're living on an island, you're going to have to collect and grow food and have shelter and all that. So I like that.
Well, I like your note that you added, because I hadn't studied that myself, but being adaptable and cooperation, it goes along with that whole, we're also in that whole cycle of air, and it's with that last conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn. So changing our concepts of how do we get things operating from a material way more to a connective way.
I think that also kind of reminds me of that Aquarian energy. Right. Having to work with others, because Aquarius rules our communications in the collective. And whenever I hear that Sabian symbol that you just read, Liz, it kind of reminds me of being aware of the dynamics of our relationships in the collective, and having to work with those.
that goes right back to, thank you for mentioning that, all that Aquarian energy between, as I asked you to, both of you, to help illuminate, going back to that word that we're for our North Node, I think, but in Aquarius, 22 degrees, and then Mars and Venus, who have been, conjunct for, gosh, they were conjunct from early February all through, like, this is April 1st, so it's just ahead, but they're just here really beginning to separate with 6 degrees. But meanwhile, they've got this Saturn and Juno commitment, connection right between them. So the community, I'm trying to relate back, supporting your idea of how dynamic this Aquarius archetype is getting expressed. Yeah.
Well, in cooperation and working together, it seems to be kind of a theme running through this. The messages from the birds, pay attention to what's going on around you, and have a little give and take.
Yeah.
Not the highway business, right? Justin, no highway here.
It's not me or the highway, No,
yeah,
this is
there's other cars coming.
Even though that's what that Aries energy wants to do, I want to do it myself, and I'm going to do it my way, that idealistic way. It's got to be done this way. But I think if we do that at this particular time, that boom, that we're going to run headlong into a wall. You got to work with others right now,
Well, Aries is interesting, just going back to that whole holistic sense, that it takes a lot of courage to actually step out and do what one's going to do. So I suppose along with that, it's really like, okay, I finally got my idea. This has got to be it. And it's new too. So you really don't have the experience yet. So it's good words. Yeah. Remember, there's other people on the highway that want to pass or something.
Well, in Aries energy, to me, it's like sometimes you just got to go for it and see how it works out, because if you didn't go for it, nothing might have happened. And so go for it and see what happens. It's initiating and starting something.
Yeah.
And having experiences in life are very important, I believe.
Yeah. I think what we'll probably see in the collective, because of this, it's such a strong beginning type of thing, new moon, Aries, Mercury in Aries, third house here. I think we're definitely going to see something. If we looked back on this, we'd probably see some new things starting at this particular time in the collective. Maybe a new company or new things.
That will be interesting. Yeah. And then, yes, restructurings.
And probably they'll last a while, because if you start a new company, that's a partnership. And so, there could be some really innovative ideas that stick. Also, there could be, somebody tries something and it just doesn't work, or it's not going to be feasible, but go for it.
Yeah. And you wonder with that Saturn Aquarian, like I'm right there, that it might also be with energy. Wouldn't that be wonderful if it were with sustainable energy, that we could really relinquish ourselves from the oil? That's a hope in some direction. Are there any other go ahead.
If we could harness the electricity from lightning, it's like so much power, but they still haven't figured that out. But maybe somebody will. This would be really cool.
Yeah, back to Franklin, our Benjamin Franklin. And then I often think of the tides, the water, with all that water energy. Now, granted, you don't want to mess up the fish and the shores, but there's got to be some way to use that whole constant energy. So we shall find out. How about some other, let's see, we didn't cover Mars. You did cover Mars. And what about Venus? Because they're in that mix too.
Okay.
What are they talking about?
25 Aquarius, a butterfly with a right wing more perfectly formed. And to me, that was about finding balance, because for an animal to fly with one wing, maybe a little bigger, they're going to have to learn to fly in some balance. They're going to have to compensate.
Yeah, I agree with that because you know, one other aspect of it is that part of that is actually transmutation of emotional energies that Dane Rudyard talked about. So I agree with you.
Mm.
It has to be a balance. We have to do some type of change, and not try to. Because Venus represents our desires, right? Is one way of looking at that, and we want to be careful with that we're not looking for a perfect outcome here to the situation, you know.
You know what? That reminds me too. If we always, as one starts really realizing it's not my way, the highway, because there's spirit, there is source, and regardless of outside religion, just that whole energy of spirit that's indelibly us, and and working with that as a cooperation to get, which all of this is saying, you know, the guidance. Because if again and again, if you do tarot, you realize that, well, if I am convinced that it's going to be my way, you don't allow that partnership to come in. So really, that's what Venus is saying too. Yeah.
Yes. And then the next one, 26 Aquarius, is a garage man testing a car's battery with a hydrometer. So to me, it was like seeing how much life is left in the battery.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Go ahead, Liz. I mean, go ahead, Sue.
Well, I was going to say, well, that gets me to Pluto, because I was noticing Pluto, because Pluto is a transformer. I mean, one of the transformer, all the dwarf planets out there, they transform too. There's a lot, everything. Mars can actually be transformation. It's a traditional ruler of Scorpio. And I'm just sharing that my awareness of that, because we studied with cosmic collaboration, which is now in past, it's been, is now kaleidoscope visions. But at that time, it was like, what's the difference? Well, Mars, just through your action, is going to change things. So, of course, it's metamorphosis. But let's go to Jupiter. I mean, not Jupiter. Let's go to Pluto.
Okay, 28 Capricorn, a large aviary. And so the birds are in their environment. And they make a lot of noise. So it's like it could be busy, like a beehive.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I've seen this archetypal symbol play out in individual people's lives is and it's in that first house itself, it'll be a lot of voices. You know, that aviary is a lot of voices. A lot of times if this shows up in a person's individual chart, they're hearing a lot of voices. I mean, they get a lot of input from a lot of people here, you know, and so I think that's that's what we got going on in the world today. Everybody's got their own say on everything, you know.
That's so insightful. That's very insightful, because that process can get to be overwhelming, right? It's like, how do you discern? How do you,
right?
Where's it headed? Let's look at that.
29 Capricorn, a woman reading tea leaves. So, seeing the hidden meaning, clairvoyance, clear seeing, knowing, or intuition.
And Justin, you were saying so much of this is all about the clairvoyance in our little chat. And I think you've brought it up again with birds. And I mean, there it is right there.
Well, yeah, our clairaudience. Yeah. And I think that was Liz that mentioned that, actually, the sort of that
okay.
clairaudience. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So there is hope that if we realize the door could be open through not us being in our own highway, but let this communication, whether it's through other voices, whether it's people, energies, everything, that will forge this path. Well, I don't know about path, this connections, right? Gee.
Absolutely.
Well, we don't have to just hang up. We have a couple of moments with our little background music, but it's really a pleasure. And Liz, Mouchette, Elizabeth, and Justin, Crockett Elsie, thank you so much. And our audience, we look forward to this. We'll be working on a monthly basis, connecting back with you. And you can always go to Talk Cosmos and find Justin and Liz. We have 5. This is our 5th year now. We're plowing on. And It's an interesting number, 5. We can talk about that again.
Change.
When we meet next month.
Okay. Thank you. Happy new projects, everybody. Blessings.
Thank you for joining us on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests connect soul growth patterns with the energetic cycles of astrology. Be sure to tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.